Good evening. Welcome to tonight's Lakeville Chamber of Commerce City Council and Mayoral Candidate Forum. It is sponsored by the Lakeville Area Chamber of Commerce. My name is Jim Kretsch. I'm the owner of Kretsch Law Office and a member of the Lakeville Area Chamber of Commerce and CVB Board of Directors. I'll be tonight's moderator. The timekeeper for tonight is Shannon Corlett. She is the interim president of the Lakeville Chamber of Commerce and CVB. In 2018, there are 2 candidates running for mayor and 6 candidates running for 2 city council seats. We have the 2 mayoral candidates here tonight and 3 of the city council candidates tonight. Starting from my left in alphabetical order is Doug Anderson, Sham Shabab, Bart Davis, Joshua Lee, and Michelle Volk. Not with us this evening is Brian Baginski, Craig Manson, and Matthew Schroer. The format tonight is going to be similar as it was in prior years. You're going to have an opportunity to present an opening statement, and then from there we'll take questions. The format of the questions will be the pre-printed questions that each of you was given. In return for that, we will also take some questions from the audience. For those of you in the audience, if you want to ask questions, there's sheets of paper at the back of the room. Please write your questions down. Bring those questions up to Shannon, and she will hand me those questions. And based upon time, we'll make sure we get to at least some of the audience questions. Please do not direct any of your questions to an individual candidate, because we will not ask that question. The questions will be for the persons up here in total, not to any individual. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for their introductions and opening remarks. On the questions, you'll have 90 seconds to answer the questions. You will also receive 90 seconds at the conclusion of tonight's festivities to give your closing remarks. Just a reminder that Shannon, during the introductions that you each have and during your questions, when you have 30 seconds left, she will hold up that sign, and when your time is up, she will hold up that sign. You may not see those signs out of the corner of your eye or while you're looking directly at them. If you see me stand up and come to the podium, that means your time is up and I will interrupt you. I will do my best to remain seated because I don't want to interrupt your final sentence or as you're concluding your remarks. But let's be respectful to the process and make sure we get to the audience questions. On your opening remarks, we will start. Michelle Volk, you won the straw poll tonight, so you will start. I'm just going to sit down and let you do your opening remarks. Just continue in an orderly fashion as each person preceding you finishes, and that way you don't have to see me get up and down. Are there any questions? No? If not, let's get started. Ms. Volk, please, with your opening remarks.
Thank you. Good evening. I am always proud to tell people everywhere I go that I'm from Lakeville, Minnesota. My parents moved here over 45 years ago, and I grew up in the Valley Park area. I graduated from Rosemont High School. I met my husband, Tom, and we've been married 37 years, and we've raised 3 daughters here in Lakeville. Currently, I'm on the Lakeville Area School Board, and I run a small business with my daughter in the downtown area of Lakeville. There are many things that I am proud of, but the number one thing that I am proud of is our police and fire departments. According to the most recent survey, the residents agree with me. We need to preserve the quality of services that these folks provide for us. I am proud of the partnerships that the schools and the business community and the chamber and the city have formed. One of those partnerships is the Lakeville Works, the Workforce Development Initiative. We have a history of managing growth over the years to not overwhelm the services of our city. And as the economy has been on the upturn, we are growing again. Month after month, Lakeville is leading other communities in building permits. We need to continue the approach of responsible managed growth that our community expects. As a longtime resident, I have experienced this growth. And I remember one of my first jobs, over 30 years ago, in Air Lake Park. And when our clients would come from the cities to visit us at the business, they would comment, are we going to see the Iowa border sign soon? I mean, they really thought they were out in the middle of nowhere. Nowadays, no matter where I travel, and when I say I'm from Lakeville, they know exactly who we are and all about our great city. We have a great reputation, and I will work hard on your behalf to retain that great distinction. Thank you.
Well, good evening. Thank you to the Lakeville Chamber for hosting our forum this evening. It's been a privilege for me to serve as Lakeville Mayor this past 2 years. Let me take a minute just to introduce myself. My wife, Deb, and I have lived in Lakeville for 35 years. We raised our children, Brian and Callista, here. I've been active in the community over the years, in early years as a member of the Lakeville JCs and an athletic association coach. Currently, I'm active at Hosanna and in the Lakeville Rotary. I'm an experienced senior financial leader, retired CFO of Hamline University, and currently I serve as Chief Operating Officer of Cristo Rey Jesuit High School. And I've held numerous board leadership positions over the years. I began my city involvement with an appointment to the Financial Advisory Committee. I served, and after that I served a term on the City Council, and I am in my first term as mayor. So in summary, I'm an experienced leader, financially conservative, and I understand the community. It would be an honor to be reelected and continue to serve. We were asked in our opening remarks to share our top 3 priorities. First, I will continue to provide positive leadership, ensuring openness, transparency, and civil and respectful communication, and a strong focus on partnerships and relationships. Second, we must remain good stewards of the public's funds and maintain our low tax rate. We need to consider funding options for park development as well. And third, we must continue efforts to be proactive in marketing our community and communicating within our community. Thank you for attending tonight, viewing the live broadcast, and watching online later. And I hope that this forum is helpful as you prepare to exercise your freedom to vote. Thank you.
Mr. Chamber, hi. My name is Hisham Shaban. People knows me in Lakeville by Sham. I'm the backboard chef. I provide a lot of good meals. I came here 22 years ago. Me and my family, my wife. We don't have any kids. The reason I'm running for mayor this year, some of my voters comes with a Sun This Week newspaper on August 2nd about city deficit, $132 million. Money they borrow and they didn't pay anything out of it. I went to City Hall and I asked, they really owe this money? They say, yes, we owe this money. And I found out it would be like $10,753 interest a day. This is insane. That's why I'm running for mayor, to figure out a way out of this deficit. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks for coming out and also watching online, and for all of those who might watch us on tape delay as well. My name is Bart Davis. I am in my first full term, so earning your vote 4 years ago, believe me, was very humbling. I'd like to thank not only the city staff, my fellow council members, as well as Mayor Anderson, for all the great work we've done over the past 4 years. You know, Lakeville continues to see substantial growth, not only in our business districts, but also, as my other members on the panel here have mentioned, when it comes to single-family growth as well. You know, you look no further than Schneiderman's Retail, the new Schneiderman's Distribution Center, the expansion of Menasha, as well as FedEx Freight, who was spotlighted at our city council meeting last night. We've had great opportunities to continue to grow, expand our existing businesses in Lakeville, and attract businesses to Lakeville. As it has been mentioned, we are the fastest growing city in the state of Minnesota. But I think one of the things to think about with that is what does it mean for that growth and how do we plan for that growth? I do believe my 6 years on Planning Commission, 3 as chair, certainly give me a unique perspective to understand what does that growth look like and how do we move forward. The trust you put in me helps me ensure that Lakeville is going to continue to prosper in a fiscally responsible way. We did talk about, what are the couple things that we need to do, or they wanted in our opening remarks. So I would like to say, here's what I think you should expect of your council member. They're honest, transparent in every decision. They put financial discipline at the forefront of what they do. They champion public safety to improve our infrastructure. They listen and communicate effectively, not only with the citizens, and that's all citizens, residents and businesses alike, but also the city staff and fellow council members. They bring an open mind to the issues facing us that are important, and most importantly, focus on families regardless of the life stage. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joshua Lee, and I'm running for City Council because I believe in Lakeville, and I'm confident that my skills and experiences will be an asset to the future growth of the city. First and foremost, I need to give credit to my family for supporting my candidacy. My wonderful wife, Andy, of 9 years, and my 2 children have been very gracious with the numerous hours I've been door knocking and campaigning. My daughter is convinced that I'm running for president of Lakeville, so if elected, we'll need to work on that. But I love living here. I enjoy my neighbors, the parks, the lakes, the various establishments in town. One way I've chosen to give back is through serving as a Lakeville Volunteer Police Reserve. In the last 4 years, I've logged over 500 plus service hours and was honored with the Police Reserve Officer of the Year Award in 2016. In this role, I've had the chance to be an integral part of the community while supporting our police and fire. One side effect of this position is that I'm familiar with nearly every city street, business, park, and I think that's very helpful in understanding how residents here experience the city. In my day job, I'm a dean for St. Olaf College. Since graduating with my master's in education, I've worked at Grand Valley State University in Michigan, Creighton University in Nebraska, and now St. Olaf. My entire career is dedicated to building strong, cohesive communities. Working at a college necessitates that we provide services similar to that of a small city. Our services include housing, public safety, recreation, healthcare, transportation, dining, etc. My work requires ongoing assessment of our services to the evolving needs of our young adults as well as other stakeholders. I believe my experiences are an asset to my candidacy because I have witnessed several institutional and city operation models. With such tremendous growth, Lakeville needs strategic and visionary leadership, and I believe I'm the person to do that job.
Thank you for paying attention to the time. Excellent, excellent work. All right, so tonight's first question, and the first 3 questions I believe you each received in advance. So here's the first question for those watching at home and sitting in the audience. And let me remind everybody that the 2 mayoral candidates are Mr. Anderson and Mr. Shaban, and the 3 of the 6 city council candidates are Mr. Davis, Mr. Lee, and Ms. Volk. Tonight's first question is, how would you characterize the business climate in Lakeville? And, because we like being compound, what do you feel should be done to attract and retain businesses in Lakeville? Mr. Anderson, you go first with this one.
Thank you very much. Well, we are very fortunate to have a robust and growing community where commercial, industrial, retail, and service businesses are moving and are expanding. Our economic development staff is responsive and creative, and we have a phenomenal economic development commission of business leaders that helps provide us insight and perspective from detailed project requests to long-term planning. Are there things we can do better? Yes, we can always improve. Over the past year, staff has worked to shorten approval processes for permits and plot approvals. I believe we have opportunities with technology advancements to continue to bring improvements. We should also continue to look at ways to be proactive, to market and sell our brand as a flourishing, top-ranked city. And we need to continue to appropriately utilize incentive tools, including tax increment financing and tax abatement, to support certain business expansion and new business development. The bottom line, We are the southern gateway to the Twin Cities. We have a full set of transportation support for industry, including rail and an airport. Let's tell our story and continue to enhance our visibility. And I want to thank Money Magazine for naming Lakeville number 28 on the list of top 50 best places to live in America. I'm thrilled about their recognition. Thank you.
Without a doubt, Lakeville is the best place to work, to live, and to raise a family. In order to attract businesses in Lakeville, I will say we need to plan a retirement community. This is huge. This will bring a lot of business in the city. I'm not going to, in this community, when it comes here, it's not going to impact our schools. We'll bring business from all over, perhaps even Fairview Hospital comes and knock on the door to build a hospital nearby. Even Home Depot might open a big business here to serve all the South and will be successfully serve our community and the whole South. Thank you.
I appreciate the complex question, Mr. Kretsch. Based on the number of now hiring signs I see across Lakeville, I would say our business community is thriving. On the other hand, this is not without its challenges, and I know there's going to be a follow-up question here coming on to that, but the question is, how do we solve this issue, which is the workforce? As a city, we need to continue to promote the benefits of locating in Lakeville for those that are looking to relocate their businesses, tout the quality of life in Lakeville, and provide incentives for acquisition and expansion, as we mentioned with Menasha, Schneiderman's, et cetera, FedEx Freight. We've proposed packages for a number of businesses within reason. I believe we cannot afford to give away the farm for the short-term game. Rather, we need to look at the long-term future of what Lakeville needs in a fiscally prudent manner. There are a number of tools, as Mayor Anderson mentioned, tax increment financing, tax abatement, but I think as the market evolves, we need to be innovative and look outside and understand with our business community what are other opportunities for us and what are the other tools we can put in the toolbox that are innovative and continue to put Lakeville at the top of people's choice to locate here. Thank you.
It would be difficult to traverse Lakeville and not think positively of our business climate in the city. When I look at the recent construction projects of Schneiderman's, FedEx, the future Aldi, Alibi Drinkery, it's clear to me that the business is steadily growing and has plenty of opportunity. Careers in areas of construction, manufacturing, transportation are particularly plentiful. However, as I speak to local business owners, it's clear to me that some businesses have had some challenges due to strict building ordinances and a lack of competitive rental options. Professional office space is at a premium, and the recent 2040 comprehensive plan details the shortage in that as well. Ultimately, I believe the key to attracting and retaining business in Lakeville depends on the infrastructure that allows residents to live, work, shop, and entertain themselves within the city limits, creating a balanced system of housing, employment, and retail. And as we continue to grow, we should prioritize retaining current businesses by providing affordable housing for their employees, encouraging labor force education, and providing their families with accessible services.
On a scale of excellent to poor, that's how I decided to answer the first part of this question. I'm just going to say that I think the business climate is good. I think we have room to improve. The community is attractive to our residents. However, we need to support our businesses with more employees. According to the last survey, only 24% of our residents actually work in our city. So one way that we could possibly increase that percentage is to start early. And I mean engaging our young people to become familiar and knowledgeable with the types of businesses that are out in our community that are looking for skilled workers. A suggestion I made at our last Board of Education meeting was to have our students tour our local businesses in places such as Air Lake. The district provides a day for our high school students to visit colleges. I would say that we should encourage the district to have 8th graders touring businesses and exploring future careers. And so this way they can take classes at the high school level that will prepare them for their career path. We need to continue to foster these relationships and retain and support our current businesses. And then, if we do these things, help our current businesses, we're going to entice other businesses to want to move into Lakeville and invest in our community. Thank you.
So question number 2, we'll start with Mr. Shaban. And the question is, again, compound. Lakeville is a growing and thriving community with businesses struggling to find workers. Apparently, demographic trends suggest that this is an increasing problem, with the number one issue likely to be workforce development for several years to come. The question is, what policies will you pursue to ensure housing is affordable for entry and mid-level workers? And that question's to all of you. Mr. Shaban, you have the floor.
About 15 years ago, when I used to go rent apartment was around $650 because the property tax was so low. Now, the same apartment rented now for $1,100 because the property tax tripled. So we already have affordable housing and already have a good service for it. But remember, people in Lakeville are buying houses for average of $450,000. They buy these houses because they like it here, nice and quiet. They buy because I have excellent school system and safe community. Thanks to our law enforcement, we are 20 minutes away from the airport, close to major highways, and we have a good parks. People come from all over to enjoy our parks. If we add more affordable housing, we might get people who don't like. Theft will go high, crime will rise. I believe that 75% from our Lakeville workforce travel from out of town. They come from different towns. For example, in my restaurant, we are 30 people work there. 5 only live in Lakeville, 25 come from Farmington. I like it that way. My voter likes my city nice and quiet that way. It doesn't affect our schools, which keep our costs down. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, I prefer the term attainable housing to support our local businesses, not the term affordable. Just as a fact, as of April of this year, the unemployment rate in the city of Lakeville was 2.4%. So we understand the challenges we do have low unemployment here. However, there still is the need for that. There is no doubt we need housing options for our businesses. The average house projected, at least from the tax levy that we just reviewed, is $307,000. That's really not necessarily attainable for some of the folks and some of our businesses that are requiring workers at that low and mid-level area. So one of the things we need to do is continue to look at options. We have a number of market rate places that are out there that have come into being. Edison and Avon Lee, which we just had a ribbon cutting late last week, as well as Lakeside Flats, which is just off of 35 as well. One of the other things I want to touch on here, we talk about workforce development and affordable housing, is actually something a little personal for me, was my son, who wasn't quite sure what he wanted to do. So he decided, he did a job shadow with Public Works and actually went in and decided he's going to go into civil engineering. So it's not necessarily a 4-year degree. He's enrolled at DCTC. Will graduate next year. Sorry, got to get my years straight. But I think one of the things it is it's more of a trade, not necessarily a 4-year college, which we've talked about workforce development, but it still is a reasonable job that pays relatively well that will allow him to actually afford housing.
It's clear that the workforce shortage is affecting many manufacturing companies in southern Lakeville. Part of the issue is housing, the other is a lack of the labor force. According to the Dakota County Community Development Agency, Lakeville has 5 communities that are designated as workforce housing. Lakeville's most recent calculation of the median household value jumped to over $300,000, which is simply too expensive for most entry-level and mid-level workers. Policies I would pursue would be looking into ways to support more workforce housing, as well as some scattered site public housing. Additionally, certain city corridors are zoned for higher density residential or mixed use and would provide more opportunities for apartment living. Meanwhile, I think it's important to note that we have a growing senior population with fixed incomes. While not necessarily entry or mid-level, many seniors have interests in the workforce and volunteer force, which we can capitalize on through a growth in our senior living facilities.
So I'm going to take a little bit of a different angle. Some of the issues with affordable housing actually comes from the cost of building. The rules and the regulations that are coming from the federal and the state, Met Council, local governments are adding thousands of dollars to the cost of a build. According to the Pioneer Press, one builder stated that building a home in Fargo or building one in Moorhead, the cost difference is $29,000, and that did not include the price of land. Another builder stated that a house, the exact same house built in 2014, cost $15,000 more in 2015 just because of state regulations. The other added costs are the fees that the city charges the developer. In the local example, in September, we had a builder that came before the city, and he's going to build 36 single-family lots. $326,000 in city fees, which includes $143,000 in park fees. 10 permits that he'll possibly have to get with MnDOT, DNR, and various other agencies. $1.2 million just in security deposits for infrastructure. So we need to make sure that there's a balance between what future cost of city services are going to cost for these homes to add to the base and the costs of an affordable home. As consumers know that when businesses have costs, they are going to pass them on to us. Thank you.
This is a big question, and I'll try to narrow this down into my 90 seconds. While we are the top Minnesota city in housing starts month after month, we must continue to look at ways we provide housing variety. We have actually done fairly well the past 2 years with this, supporting residential development community as they have brought not only single-family homes to Lakeville, but detached townhomes, market rate apartments, and subsidized apartments. We must remember, with the recent activity, we have a fairly large stock of entry-level housing, including our manufactured home parks. As for policies, I support continuing to ask our development community their ideas and periodically exploring things like lot sizes. We need to continue to annually evaluate our fees, as candidate Volk just talked about, and unfortunately not all the fees come from us. In fact, a majority of the fees don't come from us. And we need to continue to always look at creative uses of the planned unit development process like Brandon Farms. As you have stated, what drives the housing question is the need for workforce development. I have been active with the school districts and the chamber supporting our community, coming together as to STEM education, trade skill development, and participate in the Lakeville Works effort led by the chamber. We need to continue to be creative, build partnerships, and work together to do what we can to support our business community so they have the human resource pool that they need to be successful. Thank you.
So for the third and final pre-written question, we'll start with Mr. Davis. Lakeville is the fastest growing city in Minnesota and Lakeville is the fastest growing city in Minnesota, and demand for services is constantly increasing. How would you balance the increased need for services while also ensuring our city remains fiscally responsible?
Well, that's the multi-million-dollar question of the night. Couple facts on growth for Lakeville. Right now, we're on pace for about 450 new permits this year. That equates to roughly 8 to 10 miles of new roads. Even in some of our down years, when we're at 250 homes or 250 permits, that's about 6 to 8 miles. Well, what does that mean? That means increased public safety with respect to police officers, squad cars, our fire department, duty crews, plows, equipment, things of that nature. The current max tax levy that was passed was about 8%, of which 5.8% is to service our existing debt, 3.1% goes for growth. As long as I've been on the council for the past 6 years, we have never actually levied the max amount, because what we've done is we've continued to challenge staff, and staff continues to challenge themselves, more importantly, to be as efficient as possible. And even though we have to set the levy in September, they've done a great job of actually bringing it down throughout the years based on operations, whether it's efficiencies, saving on expenses, et cetera. One of the things we are challenged with is our road reconstruction that we accelerated. We didn't do anything in '09 and '10. However, we accelerated in '14, and you will see as we move past 2019, the last year of acceleration, we'll start to cut that down. And the intent is that we will not be levying as much debt as we have in the past, which gives us the opportunity to pay down that debt. Thank you.
Fiscal responsibility is one of my core platform priorities. While tax increases are inevitable, ensuring that they are manageable and reasonable is extremely important. One way we do this is through long-range budget planning. In my opinion, the current 5-year tax increase projections are just not sufficient for determining which long-range priorities in the 2040 Comprehensive Plan should be funded in a given year. Many of our expenditures are perennial, which means that they should be easily tracked and forecasted, while other expenditures should be expected based on deferred maintenance schedules, leasing agreements, or other foreseeable factors. Taxpayers deserve to have somewhat predictable tax increases with transparency in where that money is going. In my professional world, before building a new facility or initiative, we compile our remaining bond payments, deferred maintenance costs, as well as utility and service costs, and adjust for inflation over a 20 to 30-year period. Another way to maintain fiscal responsibility is through reviewing current expenditures. Lakeville should not spend dollars on personnel or initiatives simply because that's the way we've always done it. Our expenditures should be annually evaluated with a focus on measured effectiveness and rewarded based on fiscal ingenuity. While these processes currently exist in some forms, I believe long-term and transparent budget projections are required to keep ourselves accountable for city spending. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I'm going to take a little different angle. Growth does put pressure on the current services, and in years past, the city had placed a moratorium on building permits, et cetera. I'm not saying that at this time that this is something that we need to do, but it is a strategy. But currently, our city and our country is stressed with experiencing pressures of services needed for our citizens for mental health needs and the opioid and prescription drug abuse. And this is burdensome for our first responders. Our city has seen an increase in these calls over the past years, and we need to partner with Dakota County and our healthcare industry to decrease the demands on our local city services and get help for our citizens. We cannot carry this burden by ourselves. I want to acknowledge that the efforts of our police chief to have town halls, et cetera, on these topics and to educate our community on the resources that they might need and just on the topics themselves. My point being on the fiscal responsibility. We need to be creative when balancing the needs of our services and the fiscal budget. We need to explore how we can deliver services in a different way that is less stressful on the budget, and partnerships is one way of doing this.
Well, I've spent my career exercising fiscal responsibility, and I bring that experience with me in my role as mayor. We have an outstanding city administrator and finance director who provide us clear, detailed reports as to the city's financial status. We have an outstanding credit rating, and we have solid support and oversight from our Financial Advisory Committee. How do I balance all this? Over the past several years, I have supported work to invest our resources in a more efficient fashion. Examples include changes in procedures through technology improvements, changes in staffing, in-house versus contractors, and extending the useful life of certain assets, which has reduced cost of capital items. I will continue to support these types of efforts. As for spending increases, there are two reasons to do this. First, our growth demands support of our infrastructure. For example, demand for water periodically drives a need for a new well. And second, I support increased costs that drive effectiveness for the long term, like public safety improvements. However, we must always be prudent in how we implement these actions. The bottom line, our city council these last 2 years has focused on appropriate policies. We have efficiently and appropriately used cost-effective debt, and our staff has done well managing our budget, with the outcome being that since 2013, our tax rate has been declining, and today we project we have the second lowest tax rate in the county. Thank you.
I would say we need to prioritize the needs before the wants. For example, the city have two nice signs outside, electric signs. This is need or wants? I think this is wants, and this is wasting money. That's why the city is broke. I want to make my city like household. Spend money what we have, not to borrow money and spend it. Sometimes we don't need that. We need to think positive. We need to keep the light on. We need to use realistic expectation for the expenses. You might have find creative solution to afford these needs. Rise in taxes is a last resort. And always remember, we need to keep the light on. Thank you.
So we have at least one question from the audience. I'd like to get to two. I know you have 90 seconds, but internally, if you can keep to 75 seconds, that'd be fantastic. We can get to a second question. Maybe.
Don't do it.
All right. So the first audience question is, recent surveys show that Lakeville residents appreciate their parks and trails. The City Council has been discussing funding park improvements, including a possible parks referendum. What, if any, amenities should be added to our park system, and how would you propose funding such activities? Mr. Lee, I think you have the floor.
It's wonderful to get off script a little bit, because I think these are the issues that, as I've gone around door to door, the park systems come up pretty frequently, and there is a need and a want for indoor turf. There's a need and a want for splash pads and more lacrosse fields and those big park amenities. I think that these are definitely expensive amenities, and we're looking upwards of, if bonded, I believe, if my memory serves correct, it's upwards in the $14 million range. And it's a lot of money. And so as I look at what we should be requiring our residents to pay for through levies, I want to know and ask more questions than have answers for you at this point, because I want to know what will that come down to in terms of an actual number for our median home values, and what will that cause our residents to pay on an annual basis. Because our city tax is just a portion of what the increases will be with schools, with the county and state, and so we've got to look at that whole picture for a resident and what that tax increase will look like. Lakeville residents on the whole want these amenities, and I'm supportive of increasing some of those amenities that don't currently exist, but I also want to manage our overall park capacity and what things should be potentially pulled back as well. Sorry, not 75 seconds.
Thank you. First of all, we just recently had a survey, and parks were lower on the list of priorities. Second of all, what we didn't survey is, so we can ask people when we're at the door and they say, I would like this, I would like that. The next question is really, what are you willing to pay for it? So one, I would propose that we have a statistically demographic survey done, meaning if 10% of our population is made up of kids under 5, that we find 10% of those people to survey. We need to ask them what you're really willing to actually pay. The second question is how do you inform the voter in the fact that it's not just what you pay when you vote yes, it's how do you sustain it. So there needs to be an educational process that takes place with the people of our community It's not $1 million, and I'm just picking a figure, the city never said $1 million for parks, but it's not $1 million for a referendum. It's also what are the ongoing costs that are going to continue, that the city is going to have to service from day forward. Thank you.
This is a great question. Welcome to a current dialogue that's going on in City Council. And we have phenomenal parks in our community, parks and trails and recreation activities, including the Art Center, the debt-free Art Center. And we've done a lot of work. I've been involved in some of this, obviously, to look at the efficient use of resources around our parks. We rebuilt our parks plan over the last 2 years, and we focused in on things so we make sure that we're trying to respond, particularly with community parks, to the demographics around that community park, and we're not simply just rebuilding something over again. So we're trying to be efficient with the current resources we have. As far as the bigger question, we have some significant park opportunity. Now the question becomes, what do we want to do? What are the priorities? The second is, how much do those cost? And the third is, how do we fund it? And from my perspective, I do think we need to start looking at more information from our constituents as far as what our priorities should be, how should that timing lay out over the next few years to the next 5, 10 years, and then what is our appetite to help to pay for it, whether it's Antlers Park or the new Avonlea Park or a sports dome. And that's work we need to do, and I do believe that a parks referendum might be an appropriate approach for that. Thank you.
I agree with Mr. Anderson. Just I'd like to add the founding. You ask this question because you love your city. You love the parks. Last lunch, a huge campaign to donate money for our city to support this situation. This is my answer to you. Community has to be involved. Without this, city is broke, and it's gonna still broke. The city is bleeding $10,753 every day interest for the money we owe, and they didn't pay. That's too much for the city. So the community has to be involved with some donation to the city to cover all these costs. Thank you.
That is a very appropriate question, given our conversations that we've had in work sessions and whatnot. It's interesting, when we run the community survey, what's one of the top things that does appear, granted it's not as high as it has been in the past, is around our parks and our trails. The question we haven't asked is, what does it cost to maintain those parks and those trails? What does it cost for Antlers? We have great opportunities, as Mayor Anderson has shared. To me, I believe a referendum, putting to the voters, understanding what that would take, and are you willing to pay for it? And to Ms. Volk's point, Kenneth Volk's point, there's the maintenance aspect of it as well. So how can we be transparent? How can we lay that out for the community and let the community decide? It is a big question, and it is not an insignificant amount of money. I'll hearken back to our task force on the sports dome. We had a number of the organizations, youth organizations, come in, and we talked about various options, things like that. When it came down to it, it was about $5 million to build it. And then when you look at how much $1 million to maintain it every year, even though those individual associations were spending $380,000 outside of the city for turf time, who's going to come up with the other 2/3 of it? So that's one of those things that we need to bring to the voters, bring to the citizens, and have them provide the input and understand, are they willing to help foot the bill for that? Thank you.
Another question from the audience, and I believe, Ms. Volk, we're starting with you on this question. How do you propose we manage the city debt in light of all of the priorities shared this evening? So again, how do you propose we manage the city debt in light of all the priorities shared this evening?
Thank you. You know what? I'm a simple person, and I'm going to agree with Sham here in the fact that we need to look at how hard is it for a family to get out of debt when they go into major debt with their credit cards, et cetera. It's extremely hard. It's going to be extremely hard for the city to get out of debt. And why is that? Because even in your family, you still have the basic things that you need. You still have to pay your mortgage. You're going to cut back on your food costs. You may decide that the cable bill no longer needs to be paid, and that's what you're going to put towards debt. But to pay the debt it takes time, and it's a slow process. And yet, it's important. It's very important that, at least me personally, that I stay debt-free. And so I will, that is important enough that in January, if I'm elected, and when they sit down and they have a retreat with the council members, that'll be one of my first things, is saying, all right, how are we going to look at this whole pie, all the needs versus the wants? I agree with you. And actually tackle working on paying down some of this debt. Thank you.
It's a good question. And there was a citizen comment in the local paper about a month ago about their feelings about our debt situation. This is all a balancing act. Just as with a business, responsible use of debt is a way to leverage your ability to be successful. And if you look at our community, and all we have to do is single out two parts of our community, parks and residential roadways. And if you pull those two pieces, if you take a look at those two parts of our community, that is a fairly significant part of why we have debt. We adopted as a city council 6 years ago an enhanced residential road construction project timetable, because we hadn't done any residential road work for several years. And so we needed to get ourselves back on track to maintain the quality that our citizens expect. Is that going to go on forever? Absolutely not. In fact, 2019 will be the last year of that enhanced program. So we have built in, from a planning standpoint, a way that we will begin to reduce our debt over time. Fortunately, we've been making our debt decisions, our financing decisions, in an economic time where the cost of our debt is very low. It is very, very low with our credit rating, and it is fixed rate debt. So please don't be concerned about if the interest rate starts to creep up. That does not impact us. It's fixed rate debt. So I understand the concerns about this. I'm a prudent financial guy. I have years of stewardship around financial matters for large organizations. I just would ask, I would submit that we have responsible use of debt in our community. Thank you.
A couple of weeks ago, I met with the ex-mayor in my restaurant, and I asked him the questions. Do we really owe you this money? Why you guys didn't pay this money? He says, I've been asked them for 7 years to pay this money out, and nobody's listening. I do not understand who's not listening. The ship can only run with one captain, not two, not three, not four. And wherever you ask these questions, the city need help. Launched the biggest campaign ever. 64% from Lakeville residents and house income is $96,000 a year. Let's go ahead for the next 2 years. We're 65,000 people in Lakeville. I'm not going to say all of them are going to donate money. Not half, 1/3. The 20,000 people always voted. $1 a day for the next 2 years. The city will have $147 million. This is my goal. Donate to your city, help your city, and city will always have money. It happened in my country, in Egypt. And there was a success. They pay everything out, and they have a very good life now. Thank you.
The debt is a very serious question. At the end of 2018, we'll be just north of about $127.5 million that's outstanding at this point. I do work in the banking industry, so I understand the financial aspects of this. While rising rates is good as a financial institution, ours is fixed rate, and that's not a bad thing. We needed to get ahead of the game. I mentioned that earlier in one of my comments about that we didn't do a number of road reconstruction things for years. We made a conscious decision to accelerate the street reconstruction. I can tell you, sitting on council for well, this will be my 6th year, that is the #1 complaint I get constantly from people. So we've done that, and you will see 2019 is going to be the last year. I think we're going to do roughly 9.4 miles of road, give or take. When you see 2020, it's going to be closer to 4 miles. So we are dialing that back. There are going to be obviously increased levies than we've seen in the past. That is going to happen, and that's going to be required for us to actually pay down that debt. And I think we do have a plan, and we're continuing to work on a plan how we can reduce that. Thank you.
In an ideal world, I think our city would run on the Dave Ramsey plan. But unfortunately, and for those who are unaware, we would have no debt, and we would pay everything in cash. But for any small, large business, organization, institution of higher ed, that's just not feasible. And so I am concerned that it's a large number, but I'm also concerned with the numerous homes that I've visited where they're unaware of what our debt capacity is. They are unaware of our credit score, of what it means to pay taxes on a larger scale, and not just the numbers that they are paying out from their bank accounts. So I think going forward, I'm confident that we are geared towards not bonding more, trying to borrow more, that we're trying to spend less and listen to our voters in that. But I think that there are some opportunities here to educate our community about what all these numbers mean. For most of us, millions of dollars is hard to comprehend. And I think it's important for us to really understand what the financials are of our city so that we can make better decisions going forward and how to use our money.
Well, I think that's it for our questions this evening. I'd like to thank each of our candidates for attending tonight's forum, for taking the time to express your opinions to the voters of Lakeville so that they better understand your positions and why you're running for the positions that are available. I'd like to thank the City of Lakeville and its staff for the use of this nice facility and for taping tonight's events. The forum will be rebroadcast on Lakeville's government channel and also will be available on the city's website. As we stated in the prior forum, the Lakeville Area Chamber of Commerce has not and will not endorse any of the candidates in any of the elections this year. Good night, and remember to vote on election night, Tuesday, November 6th. Thank you again.
Welcome.
Closing.
May I ask a closing
what am
remarks?
I doing? Mr. Anderson.
That's okay, but it was eloquent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I thought, I get a pat on the back and good job, and I ruin it for everybody.
You did not.
My apologies.
That's
You
okay.
each have 90 seconds, correct, for your closing remarks. And then maybe I'll come back up and do a shorter version of what I just said.
That's just fine.
Mr.
No problem. Thank you very much. Well, it continues to be a very exciting time here in Lakeville with our growth, new and expanded businesses, from the Moment Senior Care to Compeer Financial, to Freddy's Steak Burgers, to Menasha, and yes, to Chipotle. As we continue to move forward, we will stay aligned with our planning. The comprehensive plan which we have worked on the past 2 years and the values and objectives of our Envision Lakeville plan, which is currently in the process of a 5-year update. This is why we are one of the best places to live in America. We as City Council, together with our city staff, ensure that we support diversified economic development. We provide a good value for quality public services. We have safety throughout our community. We need to continue to work on policies that support a home for all ages and stages of life. Our annual celebration, Panaprog, and arts activities provide a sense of community and belonging. And we provide access to a multitude of natural amenities and recreational opportunities. As mayor, I see myself having 3 roles. The first is to serve as a city council member, 1 vote just like everyone else on city council. The second, I have a responsibility for leadership of the meetings and administrative work, including document approvals. And finally, I have the privilege to serve as our city's brand representative, Whether regional mayor meetings, at the Capitol, at ribbon cuttings, or just around town, it's my honor to represent us and express what we all know that live and work here. Lakeville is a great community. Thanks for listening, and I would appreciate your support by voting to re-elect Doug Anderson, Mayor of Lakeville, on November 6th. Thank you.
Our president is a businessman. He brings money from all over the world. He has brought the economy to the highest level ever. I am a businessman myself. I know how to bring money to the city. I know how to be a deficit. It doesn't matter where you come from, what language you speak. I'm lucky enough to carry 2 citizenship from 2 of the greatest countries in the whole world, United States and Egypt. I learned in Egypt how to be responsible, strong, patient. I learned in America the power of technology and the beauty of the freedom of speech. That's why I'm sitting here today. The city deficit has been going up for several years, only being the interest. Leadership has to have a courage to fix the budget. I plan to cut spending and find new sources to pay our deficit. If you love your Lakeville, vote for me. Lakeville will sink if you don't tackle this together. Your tax will go high, and life will be not easy anymore in Lakeville. Go ahead, Lakeville voters, and do the right thing. Let's make history and launch the biggest campaign fundraiser ever for our city. $1 a day for 2 years. Your city will go through this. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody, for coming out and watching tonight. Great questions from the audience and very relevant, because those are a lot of the things we've been talking about on City Council over the last couple of years as well, when it comes to debt, when it comes to our parks, it comes to our trails. We have great amenities here. We all know that. It's a great community. That's why we live here. We have great schools. We have great partnerships, not only with the city, we have great partnerships with our schools, with the county, et cetera. I think one of the things that's interesting is actually when you look at some of our street reconstructions and some of the street work that's going on, there's now a new cost share, thanks to our county representative, where we're not paying as much in that. And part of that is that's also going to go to help us not bonding as much as we need to for certain road reconstruction projects. Serving the citizens of Lakeville, and this is all citizens, residents, businesses, all of you, is really an honor. As an elected council member, I will listen. I'll be transparent in my decisions, which I have demonstrated over the past 6 years. And I'll look for what's the well-being, not only for Lakeville now, but Lakeville in the future. Together, we can guide our city to prosperity, but it's going to take all of us to do it, and we need to do it together as one Lakeville. Thank you.
I value family, community, leadership through service. Through my roles as a husband, a father, neighbor, police reserve, and college educator, I believe I have the experience and skills to strategically lead our city. I consider serving city council to be a significant responsibility. I'd be humbled and honored to serve Lakeville in this way, and I hope you consider voting for me this upcoming election. During this campaign, I visited 2,200 homes, as well as local businesses and nonprofit organizations. In those visits, I've listened to the overwhelming love people have for the city, as well as the important concerns that they have that will shape my decisions as a council member. I believe my job is to consistently ask critical questions to pursue or to push the status quo and keep our city accountable to the successful implementation of our long-term goals. Lakeville has existed long before me and will exist long afterwards. Lakeville has a strong legacy of leadership, and I plan to continue that into the next chapter of our city's history. Finally, since the start of this campaign, I've been impressed by the camaraderie and the civility of my fellow mayor and council candidates, which gives me a lot of hope and pride for local government. I believe each of these individuals has an important voice to share, and I hope that regardless of the outcome of this election, each one of you continues to be involved in the city. Thank you all very much for your time, and I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank the Chamber for hosting this event. I really appreciate the audience being here. I appreciate the people that are going to be watching and trying to make this decision. But I also agree with you, Joshua, that I appreciate all of you guys throwing your hat in the ring, just like myself, saying, I am willing to serve this community. You guys are all great, great people. If elected, as a council member, I think I would bring a different perspective to the table. As a small business owner, I would have the perspective of what new policies, how they would affect businesses. As somebody that's served on the Lakeville School Board, I would also have the experience of knowing how some of the actions of the city and some of the things that are going to take place would actually affect all 3 school districts that are part of the Lakeville community. But personally, I believe in public service, in the term meaning serving our public. I believe in open communication. I'm always willing to meet and talk with you about your issues, but I also believe in listening and hearing your ideas, and maybe you're going to offer me a different perspective that I need to seek out. We should be proud as a community of how many of our kids, after they graduate, go off to school, get a career, and they actually get married and they come back here to live in Lakeville. I would be honored to receive your vote on November 6th, and I would be honored to serve this great and wonderful community that I am so proud of. Thank you.
Again, my apologies for getting the cart in front of the horse in the last segment. Thank you all so much for being here at tonight's forum. For everybody in the audience and at home, please remember to vote on November 6th. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job, Mr.